Thursday, December 9th. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, we talk about the board game Agricola.
Let's do this.
So I took tomorrow off work for the sole reason of I want to go skiing and I don't want to pay a lot of money to go on the weekend.
See, if I had all these days off, I would not be using them, like on these Wednesdays and things. I would pile them up right up against the holidays and get like this gigantic vacation, which is what I'm doing. I'm going to have the final 2 weeks of the year off and not going. Basically, next week I'm going to work, and then after that I'm not going to work again until January 5th.
Well, you see, the only reason I'm doing it this way is that I forgot how many extra vacation days I had. So by the time it was, okay, I got to spend all these, other people already took all the good days.
Mm-hmm.
But I worked it out. I'm taking the whole week before New Year's off and all the time, right around Christmas off and, all that business. And then, of course, I'm taking a month off next year, maybe 2. So it all works out.
2? I don't know. Anyone will give you 2 months off.
Well, I got 30 vacation days.
Well, that's not 2.
That's a month and a half.
It's not 2 months.
It's a month and a half. And if I take a little bit of leave of absence, there we go.
I wish I could do leave of absence. I would do leave of absence for a whole year.
They just won't pay you. You want to live a year without getting paid?
Well, leave of absence is cool because it means I can sort of leave the job, but then go back to it as soon as I need money.
Yes.
So, it's like quitting, but you're not quitting. You're just, it's like guaranteed job if you want it again, but you can leave it for now. See,
one guy at my work apparently a long time ago took a sabbatical, a long one, to be a professional chef for a while, and then he came back to do our stuff.
Yeah, see, it's like if I could just take 6 months off and, I wouldn't care if I didn't get paid because I got money saved up enough for 6 months. Then I could just live for 6 months and try to do something else. And if I fail, guaranteed go back, no problem.
But it's been busy at work lately. I haven't had the opportunity to wander around and go for those super long lunches I used to go on. But I wandered over today to Bryant Park to check out the ice skating, and it was surprisingly bustling, even at lunchtime.
Yeah, the ice skating over there is kind of weak compared to the Rockefeller Center ice skating. The thing is, the Rockefeller Center is much fancier and shinier and all that.
No, to anyone who's never been to New York City, you see that place, with
it's really small.
You see that place on TV or in The Critic with all those flags, and it's this gigantic, there's always the two protagonists of a movie, ice skating by themselves at night. Now, there's an hour-long line, and the rink is the size of our house.
Yeah, the rink is, the Bryant Park rink is also pretty small.
It's bigger than last year.
It is, but the ice is still not the greatest. Remember, it's not the greatest ice.
They built that gigantic, winter village around it, including
they always do that to sell, holiday gifts. They got the same thing in Union Square.
Yeah, but
giant gift thing.
But this year they got this 2-story, heated building you can go into and hang out. It's weird.
Oh, that's kind of weird. They usually just do the booths. It looks like
no, they're fully enclosed.
Looks like a dealer's room at a convention, only Christmas.
Now they're fully enclosed buildings, and then they built this 2-story building of buildings among them.
And they got all those trucks providing the electricity and shit.
No, they got structures and buildings providing all that.
Huh?
You got to go see it. It's kind of weird.
I've seen it, 2 or 3 years in a row. I don't know.
Yeah, but they've upped the ante. So I went and got Belgian waffles covered in ice cream.
Oh,
they
had
lunch.
Belgian waffles there?
Yes.
Shit.
For lunch. That was the best lunch ever.
You want to have lunch tomorrow there?
Tomorrow.
Oh, Thursday?
Maybe. That's all I got. I guess I should have a gaming anecdote or something. I've been
playing
NS, Left 4 Dead.
Yeah, I've been playing video games.
I have Order Ecclesia. I have played it. It's awesome. It might be the best Castlevania game ever. I can't say that for sure.
Best ever. I don't know. I haven't played it, but I don't know.
I'm not sure. I said might. As in. You know how when you look at a team in football and there's 2 games left and they're undefeated up to this point, and they might go undefeated. This is beyond that. This is all right, the Lions won a game. They might win another game.
Okay.
But it might be. There's a chance. I'll give the game that. It's fantastic. You know what I played on the way home?
How much different could it be from just other Castlevanias?
It's just polish. Polish counts for a lot.
It's just more of the same.
Yeah, exactly, but polish.
Whatever.
Anyway, so I could be playing that, but after I finished the book I was reading, I didn't play that. I, in fact, took that out of my DS, put Advance Wars in,
Good job.
and turned 3 of the last A's I have into S's.
All right.
And that was somehow greatly gratifying, perhaps more so than Castlevania. Am I getting stuck in game? Am I in like a gaming rut? Is that the reason I'm only playing NS?
No, if you're in a gaming rut, you need playing anything.
No, a rut means you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. A lull means I'm not playing at all.
Uh-huh.
I think I'm in a rut.
All right, you and your rut lulls.
I don't know. What can I do about it? I guess I could play Mirror's
You
Edge.
do it all for the lulls.
I don't know. I want to play new games, but a lot of times new games disappoint me so profoundly that
Man, I looked at like the upcoming games for DS list.
weak.
There's like nothing. It's like Dragon Quest V. It's like I'm actually almost considering a stupid level up RPG just because there's nothing else. I mean, Chrono Trigger came out recently, but I'm talking about the future. The DS is not looking like anything. Where's Fire Emblem? Come on, what the fuck? I'm
Where's
waiting.
another Advance Wars? That's like printing money.
Where's like new Super Mario Brothers 2?
Yeah, seriously, we had that 2D side-scrolling original-style platformer Mario on the DS, and while it was
Where's like Kirby's Canvas Curse again? Like when the DS first came out, at least they were trying shit, even when it didn't work so well. Now it's like they've given up and they're just bringing out, you know.
Of course, I'm gonna say something funny. Where's another 3D Metroid game with FPS in?
Where's a 2D Metroid game?
True that.
The Castlevanias are almost the same exact thing, but you know, Metroid is something else.
I don't know really what's going on. I mean, I feel like the cycle has been broken in some way. I mean, I guess my whole life I've been used to this sort of ebb and flow of games come in, games go out, games come in, games go out. And the DS for a long time has had like the same flow. And just as I was getting to the point where I wouldn't pull my DS out anymore, a game would come along. And like it was this perfect timing. But
Yeah,
suddenly
they were like doing Phoenix Wright. They threw out some Hotel Dusk. There was all this, you know, weird, you know, the stuff coming out, and now it's just nothing. If anyone knows a DS game that's coming out that's worth paying attention to, not one that's already out,
and one that is worth paying attention to. That is
Right.
the important part there, because there are a lot of games for the DS and the GBA.
not worth paying attention.
Not good.
No. Actually, I was playing a GBA game recently. I went out and I got Zelda 3, aka
Oh, shit.
Link to the Past, and because I don't have a news, I'm going to talk about it some. People may not realize something that's sort of freaky, right? There was Zelda 1 and Zelda 2. Zelda 3 was for the Super Nintendo and came out in 91. The Game Boy Zelda came out in 93, which is totally blows my mind that the Game Boy one came after the Super Nintendo one.
Well, I mean, Zelda 1 and Zelda 2 had that flimsy, like, contiguous plot. I mean, there weren't that many Zelda games back then. There was The Legend of Zelda and then Zelda 2.
Actually, the BS Zelda plot, which I just recently learned of, is more contiguous a little bit.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the well-known Nintendo canon.
Yep.
So we got, Zelda 1, Zelda 2. Contiguous in that the instruction book told you they were contiguous.
Yeah. Not really.
And they both
though.
had a Zelda and a Link and an Impa. And it kind of made sense.
There was no input in Zelda 1.
I guess there was Old Man.
There was Old
And
Man.
Old Woman.
And Old Woman.
I like to think that Old Woman was... Plus, Impa's in the instruction book!
Is Zelda 2.
Not in Zelda 1?
I'm pretty sure not.
Are you?
Okay, you can go investigate, but
Well,
I'm
it's
pretty
right,
sure
it's right over there.
I'm pretty sure she's not in the Zelda 1 instruction book.
Anyway, is this going to be a sword situation?
Perhaps.
Scott and I got into an argument at RIT. This lasted like an hour, and everyone in the room was
It
like,
wasn't RT was here.
No, it was at RIT.
It wasn't, it was
It
here.
was definitely at RIT.
It wasn't.
Yes, because I still had all those. Remember that Lego bin full of instruction manuals that I eventually
We still
threw
had
away?
the Zelda instruction manuals out in the hallway where it is now.
Yes, but this argument happened at RIT.
No, it didn't. It happened here.
All right, I don't understand why you're making up something like that.
No, why are you making up something or remembering incorrectly and refuse to distrust your memory?
Because I remember very clearly.
I remember very
Greg and
clearly
Alex
as well.
Okay.
So whose memory wins?
In the past, it has been mine.
No,
Mr.
just because someone else agrees with your memory does not mean your memory is correct. I can get people to say, yeah.
Scott, is this going to be one of those situations where you tried to convince me that I was in Rochester in the theater with you idiots watching the second Matrix movie, when in fact I was living in Poughkeepsie?
Well, there's
I
the
had never
perfect
seen that
example
movie.
in which, I had people agreeing with my memory, yet somehow we were wrong. Now, this is a situation where people may agree with your memory, but you could still be wrong.
I point out that I think you're just hedging your bet there.
Yeah.
This definitely happened at RIT.
It definitely
Anyway,
did not.
The pertinent part here is that there have often been arguments in the crew where, for reasons of entertainment, no one will actually look anything up or in any way try to bring evidence. We'll just
Well,
argue.
when we do, things happen, usually relating to berries.
Oh my God, the berries. This happens kind of often.
You learn your lesson. Don't look shit up when you're arguing, because everyone will be wrong.
All I want to say is we argued for over an hour about berries, and we realized then that we didn't know what berries were. And you might think that's stupid, but no. Look online. We didn't know what berries were. Our argument was bullshit after an hour.
Everyone's argument was bullshit.
It was fantastic. But
Don't look anything up. You'll learn things you don't want to know.
But at the point when we were having this argument, which I still insist was at RIT in Colony because I was sitting in my computer chair. Anyway,
I still insist it was not, because you're sitting in this room.
I said that it was the red sword. And Scott
I said
insisted,
it was the wood sword.
and I was pretty sure it was the red sword. Because if
I'm
you look
pretty
at the
sure it is
game,
the wooden sword.
it's pretty red.
Oh,
And,
come on, yeah, red, because it's made of wood.
If it was made of wood,
It's
it would
also
be
the
brown.
shittiest. It's the shittiest sword, which is why it is. Of course, wait. It's
look-
reddish brown, first of all,
But
right?
the second sword is the white sword. Therefore, it follows that they have color names until you hit the master sword or the
it's actually
magic sword.
the magic sword.
I just
It's
said that.
Wood, white, and magic.
No, it's red, white, and magic.
Well, actually, no, we're both wrong.
Yes, it
because
was sword.
That the first sword in Zelda 1 is just sword. It is not red, it is not wooden, it is just sword. However, I contend that sword is made of wood.
There is nothing
Why else would it be red
quite so fantastic.
and wooden and brown?
After having an hour-long argument with many different people taking many different sides, everyone strongly full of conviction, and then the luminary from on high comes down with proof, evidence of the truth. The evidence is presented, and it turns out that every single person in the argument was equally wrong, and no one in any way had anything even resembling truth on their
Yes.
side.
But anyway, I played Zelda 3 again. I played the GBA version, which is pretty interesting because it also has 4 swords in it, but I'm not sure if that 4 swords is the same 4 swords that the GameCube has. If it's a different 4 swords, then I have to play it. If it's the same 4 swords, I don't. But actually, I'm thinking maybe I should play it, because if you beat the 4 swords in the GBA version, then you get an extra dungeon in the single-player version, like the hero dungeon or some shit like that. Anyway, Zelda 3 is sort of... It's a very strange Zelda game, and it's like, I wish the newer Zelda games were more like it.
You know, I feel like Zelda 3 set one of those precedents that should have been followed. Like, you know...
Well, it was followed in Zelda 64, but then it was never followed again.
Yes, but that's the thing. They didn't keep following up. I mean, when the square boss precedent was set, square bosses were everywhere from that point on. Like, it was obvious. You expected them.
Yeah, and in a way that diluted the power of it, yet at the same time, not having one felt even less so.
It created a ritual, and the loss of the power of the square boss was kind of balanced by the fact that you added this ritual of gaming. I know it's coming, I beat you, and now I beat you, Mr. Behind the Scenes. But Zelda 3 set the precedent of, you play a little game and do some dungeons, and then holy shit, the actual game is like 80% of that.
You start the game by beating like this opening dungeon, right? Then you get like 3 medals, and then you do the castle thing again. And then suddenly there's 7 more dungeons and then another castle.
7!
Which is
3 to
actually-
7.
Which is actually sort of sad. I wish there were 8 and then another castle. That way it's sort of like the original Zelda, where it's 8 dungeons and then 9 is the boss.
I do feel like Zelda 3 was probably the ultimate of the old style Zelda game.
The other thing about it is that it has like so many items. Like, oh my god. And some of the items, like, you don't even get them in dungeons. Like the cape. You get the cape like somewhere that's not in a dungeon at all. You could actually completely miss the cape and never find it if you don't know what you're doing. And if you don't have the cape, some of the game is just stupidly hard. Like, and you'll not, like, the cape allows you to get some other items too. So if you don't get the cape, like, you won't get all the pieces of heart, and it's terrible. But
I guess, like, compared to Ages and Seasons, which were not, I don't know, they weren't as fun as Zelda 3 to me. Or compared to Minish Cap, which was trivial.
Yeah, Zelda 3 was like the business, and Zelda 64 was just like Zelda 3. It had just as many items. It also had two different worlds to go between, the young Link and old Link world versus, Link to the Past had the golden world and the regular world.
Of course, it wasn't the same kind of game from a purely mechanical standpoint.
Well, it was
obviously.
a 3D game and a 2D game, but otherwise it was like the same, made from the same mold.
But I'm saying in terms of pure mechanics, like in terms of the kind of game you play on a straight up, how do I interact with this game way, Zelda 3 was kind of like the ultimate of the top-down, 2D, hit stuff with your sword and solve complicated, sometimes time-based puzzles game.
Yeah, the other 2D Zeldas, even though they just weren't as grand as Zelda 3. It's like they kept making 2D Zeldas, Minish Cap, Game Boy, and Origin Seasons, and while those are great, except for Minish Cap, they weren't as big.
I beat Ages, and I beat it, and I was like, what? That was it?
And it's like, they should just make another 2D Zelda for the DS. Oh, that's right, there was another 2D Zelda for the DS. Also not as big as Zelda 3.
Nah.
And they should just make it just like Zelda 3, only even bigger. Be like, yeah, there's 3 overworlds and 25 dungeons. And that would be the business right there. That's all you got to do.
That game was just so good. And the dungeons were so varied. I mean, Minish Cap and even a lot of the other top-down Zeldas, the dungeons were all the same, just skinned differently, or like there'd be one gimmick.
Or like, the dungeon would have like one gimmick to it, and they'd be really short and small, and it would just be that gimmick to the dungeon.
Zelda 3, like every dungeon was so different.
Yeah, and pretty big too, and dangerous. Like, it actually counted at the end. It tells you how many times you died. I think I died 14 times.
That's about right.
Something like that.
For a seasoned player.
Yeah. I don't know. Just, if you haven't played Zelda 3, you should probably play Zelda 3. And the thing is, Zelda 3 is actually like, it's weird because the overworld, even though there's 2 overworlds, there's the golden world and the regular world, is actually pretty small. It's like Zelda 1 feels like it has a bigger overworld than Zelda 3. Like, it actually, it's like I could get from one end of the map to the other, like in no time, without even using the magic flute or anything. But the not so magic flute, actually.
Zelda 1 had, don't start that argument again.
What?
The argument about whether it was the flute or the magic flute?
Well, in Zelda 1, the flute was obviously magical. In Zelda 3, the flute had no magical powers whatsoever.
How about Zelda 2?
Zelda 2, the flute?
What did it do? Do you remember what it did?
You blew the flute and it
did something.
Made bad guys do stuff.
No. It only was usable on the overworld map. Along with the hammer.
I know. You used it on the overworld map. And
used it twice. Well, maybe 3 times.
They like make something appear that was invisible.
It made a castle appear that was invisible, and
that's a magic flute then.
And it made a spider run away.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's definitely a magic flute. But the Zelda 3 flute was non-magical. All it did was make
I would say
this bird come and carry you away.
It amazes me. There are a lot of gamers who they played like all the modern Zelda games. They love Twilight Princess and all this stuff, but they've never played any of the original Zeldas. Like 1, 2, 3, 64.
Well, that's like
even.
the people who played Final Fantasy 7. They're like, oh my god, I'm a super Final Fantasy guy. They haven't played Final Fantasy 6.
Yeah.
It's like, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
But I guess if you're gonna play one of the original Zeldas for context, and you're not really a gamer, you don't really want to like be hardcore about it, I think Zelda 3 is the best one.
Well, because Zelda 3 combines the epicness but also the hardness. Like Zelda 64 is actually, while it's as big and epic as Zelda 3, it's easy. Zelda 3 is actually kind of hard in places. I mean, you can always go to the fortune teller to figure out what you need to do, which I did not do. But it's still, places in it are freaking hard. Some of the bosses will just own you.
I think Zelda 2 probably was harder, but it was only a very few...
Zelda 2 was definitely harder, but Zelda 3 actually had difficulty. A lot of the other Zeldas, even the Game Boy Zelda just doesn't have difficulty, even though it's the same kind of game.
I mean, Zelda 1, a lot of the difficulty was just you don't know where stuff is, and you gotta bomb every wall.
The other thing is, like, getting your head... Like, a lot of the other games that allow you to travel between 2 worlds, right? Like, the way that works is either... It's like there are portals, and you can go to them, and that's it. Zelda 3, the way you travel between the 2 worlds is actually sort of tricky and difficult. It's like as soon as you beat the first half of the game, right? Well, Jay, all right, here's how it works. I'll explain it to you, right? You start out in the good overworld, right? The good overworld has portals to the dark world, right? There's also the magic mirror. if you have the magic mirror and you're in the dark world, you can use it at any time to go to the good world. So the magic mirror is actually one way. It goes from dark world to good world.
But the thing is, what's brilliant is one, the way they set it up to bring you back, which from a game design standpoint was probably primarily to prevent you from getting to places you shouldn't get to or breaking the game.
Exactly. When you use the magic mirror to go from the good world, from the bad world to the good world one way, it leaves these sparkles lying there, right? And that means you can go back to the bad world through the sparkles, but you won't be able to go back to the bad world at a different spot. So where you can only go, it prevents you from going to places you'll be able to go anywhere in the good world because you can go everywhere in the good world, but it prevents you from going to places in the dark world they don't want you to go yet. And what happens is as you expand more in the dark world, right, by getting new items like the hammer and such, right, that let you to go to new places in the dark world, you can still go everywhere in the good world, but there are portals in the good world to the dark world that you have to find in tricky spots. So it's like there's some places in the dark world, like the bottom left, you just can't get there. But eventually, you'll get the hammer, and when you get the hammer, you can go someplace in the good world and then use the mirror. Then use the port.
Yeah, it's the other way around. Anyway,
right.
You don't need to. The point is,
see how confusing it is to explain. But it's really clever. They could actually make a whole game just out of that one mechanic.
The game design of Zelda 3 is so perfect and polished. It's an amazing game. It's one of the best games ever made.
Yep, definitely. All right.
A
lot of people haven't played Zelda 3. I played it again recently and beat the whole thing and got every item. So other people got to be paying attention to that.
So speaking of upcoming DS games, I had a segue here if you hadn't jumped in, but I'll go back like this didn't happen. There is an upcoming DS game that you'll probably all want to play at least a little bit.
What?
The great Giana Sisters is actually getting a legitimate release.
Well, it was always legitimate.
Well, no, it was taken off the shelves pretty much immediately, and I don't remember.
No, it was. My cousins had a copy. You could buy it. Everyone had it. Anyone at Commodore 64 had Giana Sisters.
Yes, but the Nintendo, it was taken off of shelves everywhere. There are lots of lawsuits and stuff around it.
All I know is that everyone I knew at a Commodore 64 also had Giana Sisters. So if it was taken off the shelves, it was taken off the shelves way late, meaning after everyone bought it.
Well, not everyone had it. I mean, no one.
Well, not everyone, but a lot of people.
Anyway, this game, I don't know how, this is reported on Kotaku, but someone has sorted out all the rights because the game was basically...
That's a lot of work, sorting out the rights to an old game like that.
The game was basically just a straight-up clone of Mario Brothers.
It wasn't an exact clone of Mario.
It was 90% the same game. You jump and hit star blocks to get your power-ups.
Right, well,
and
level 1 looks a lot like Mario 1, but the other levels start, in the second world is an underground world, and there's a lot of similarities, but it's actually really different. You can shoot things, and they don't shoot like fireballs. They shoot sort of straightforward, I think. And, it's different enough from Mario 1 that I would say it is not a ripoff, even though in those days, a platforming game where you hit blocks with your head.
Well, the thing is, if you look through the game, there are a whole bunch of spots that are exactly tile for tile.
There are many
layout.
spots, but there are not entire things.
But there are so many spots that the game clearly had to have been drawn primarily from it.
There is indeed an obvious drawing from.
Also,
yes.
The girl's name was Maria.
Yeah, Maria Giana.
Yes, Mario, one letter.
Maria Giana.
Yes, one letter. There is no way.
Well, if it was really a ripoff, she would have been named Giana.
How many Marios are there between you?
3.
I kind of want to play this game. Plus, Scott, mushrooms and blocks.
Yeah.
Who comes up with that out of nowhere, eh?
The bosses were different.
Yeah, those bosses were... Well, what bosses were there in Mario 1 other than King Koopa?
That's what I'm saying. King Koopa wasn't there. There was like these other things. They were actually more like the bosses from Super Mario Land for the Game Boy.
Anyway, the game was trouble, and somehow now it's coming out on the DS, and I can't imagine that this will sell to anyone except people who remember the original and have their old school credentials on the line.
They actually had really good music that was nothing like the Mario music.
It did. The game had fantastic music. That's why there's so many remixes. Normally, I'd say things of the day right here, but Scott informed me that he thinks it's stupid to say things of the day and that we should just, I guess, assume that people will figure it out.
I think it's pretty corny, at least the way you say
Things of the day.
it. Yeah.
So how should I say it?
Just be like,
Hey, time for things of the day?
yeah.
It's totally lame.
So at least it's not.
Things of the day.
At least it's not corny.
Things of the day.
retarded.
Things of the day.
Yeah, and you don't sound like a person, with a mental problem.
So what do you got?
Oh, so check this out,
You
right?
have a things of the day. But are things of the day lame?
No, just you saying it.
Okay, so why don't you say it then? Like, I offered that you could say it right now and you refused.
Yeah, because we should have a, like a thing.
What kind of thing? Like someone saying things of the day?
I don't know. Maybe not in a corny way.
So what's a non-corny? Give me an example of a non-corny way. How would you say it? How would you record that thing for posterity?
I'd have a robot do it.
Okay, so we get the Stephen Hawking voice.
Doesn't have to be Stephen Hawking. It'd be a better robot than that.
There aren't that many better robots.
I think there are.
Anyway, what do you got?
Mechagodzilla. Anyway.
Ah!
That sounds good. So this dude went to the monster truck rally.
Bitchin'.
And you know what he brought with him?
A monster truck?
A camera. You know what he put on that camera?
No.
No, a tilt shift lens.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what that is?
I have no idea.
I had no idea either. And you know what else he did with that camera?
Took pictures.
Besides that, more specifically,
Broke it.
stop motion. So stop motion, tilt shift lens, and monster truck rally. You know what the result is?
A thing of the day.
The whole monster truck rally looks like Matchbox cars, and all the people look like toy people. And he made a video of this because it's stop motion, and he put this cool song on it called Metal Heart, and he named the video after the song Metal Heart. And it's pretty cool because there's a little demolition derby with all these Matchbox cars. I mean, it's just a pretty hilarious video all around.
Oh, I see how it works. There's a good Wikipedia thing that explains tilt shifting.
Yes, you tilt and you shift.
Well, it by doing that, because you're taking everything at the angle, it reduces the depth of field.
Uh-huh. Anyway, everything looks tiny, like it's a toy, and it's awesome, and you should watch it.
All right.
Especially when the robotic, monster thing comes out.
So we've been playing Left 4 Dead, and of course it's fun, but we haven't really messed around with the game a lot yet. I mean, a lot of people, when I was younger and a game like this was out, I would be looking for glitches and then exploiting those glitches for hilarity and all that stuff.
Instead, now I watch other people exploit the glitches on YouTube, and I just play normal like.
Yes. Now, I have not attempted this, and I don't know if Valve has fixed it, because they tend to be very vague when they release updates to Left 4 Dead. Like, a lot of the updates say, fixed a glitch, or fixed the exploits that we're not going to tell you what it was.
Better than Apple saying bug fixes.
But I suspected something like this, and we're going to try to experimentally verify the behavior here, but it appears that if you just abandon your team and just move through the map as fast as possible, you can stay ahead of, I guess, where the AI director is deciding what to do, and most of the zombies will spawn behind you. All the swarms, if they spawn at all, will spawn behind you. And any boss zombies that spawn in front of you will be glitched and stupid, will probably run backwards.
Yeah, but if everyone runs together, it doesn't work, because then you've got everyone together and it's going to try to get you. But if you've got 3 people falling way back and 1 person way ahead, it's going to keep attacking the 3 people and not the 1 person.
I'm going to have to experiment with this and then possibly run ahead.
Yeah, because I've thought about running ahead a few times, but I never ran ahead that far. And in this video, some girl just starts running way far ahead of everyone else. And then this other guy says, oh, I thought we were going to play seriously. I guess not. So he starts running, and the other 2 people stay behind and die. And the girl makes it to the safe room, and then the guy eventually shows up at the safe room, and she lets him in, and that's over.
Though, in general, I got to say, I can only play Left 4 Dead with good people anymore, because I want to move fast, and people just hunker down and waste all their ammo and their time and their life, hiding from every zombie swarm instead of just fighting their way through it and moving on.
Yeah, definitely. If the team sits in one spot too long, it's no good. And I think the The last versus game we played was the awesome.
That was such a close game until the very end when my
It's
whole
like
team
at
fell
first,
apart.
it's like at first I join in, right? 7 Geeknights people are already there, including Rim. And Rim's, gets on a team with some people I recognize the names of. So I'm like, shit, I'm on the team of people I don't recognize the names of. Is this going to be a bad team? Because I know at least 2 people on the other team, Rim and Classic, are good. Are the people on this team good? I don't know. This could turn out to be bad for me.
Like they won the first round by like 40 points. Then
we won the first round by like almost nothing.
And then we won the second round. So in the end, we were ahead by
they were
9
ahead by like
points.
5 points. It was this incredibly tiny margin. And I was like, all right, guys, we got to win this.
And then
in the third round, we just destroyed. It was total ownage. And in the fourth round, it was total ownage again, and we wrecked them.
But I can say one thing. If you watch this video, times I've played this game with good people, the team of 4 has moved almost this quickly. So it is possible. Don't hide in the back. I feel like this should be something like the rallying cry of shoot the medic, not the heavy. Move fast, not slow.
Yeah, just freaking go. Go, 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 go.
180 miles an hour.
Yeah, stop when you have to, but then as soon as there's an opening, go. Like as soon as it's quiet, go. As soon as the elevator opens, get in.
So it's been a long time since there's been a 2 or 3 player board game.
Oh wait, before we start, here's an idea. You know how when people like running a mile or something, or like in the Olympics and such, they have like people who are just there to like set the pace. It's like they'll go fast, and one guy keeps up with them, but then they drop behind.
Nominate one person on the team to be the pace setter.
Right, someone is the pace setter, and it's like everyone else just keep up with me. And I'll be the leader.
Well, you go one step further, and the pace setter is also the point. Well, I guess theoretically, if you're coordinated, the pace setter should be the rear guard, but that's very hard to pull off unless you're really good.
Yeah, but it's like everyone should, there's someone in front, and everyone just keep up with that guy in front. Everyone just do it, And guy in front, just keep going as fast as you can go.
Well, as we've proven, if you apply even rudimentary tactical thinking and predefined strategy to Left 4 Dead, the game ends. You just win.
Well, we haven't played an expert yet, so we'll have to see.
Well, in versus at least.
Oh, yeah, definitely versus.
Anyway, so we've had this trouble where there aren't good 2 or 3 player board games. I mean, by the way game theory is, a versus 3 player game will either devolve into solitaire, non-interactive solitaire or weekly interactive solitaire, or it'll devolve into 2 people gang up and have a chance of winning, thereby increasing their odds of winning to 50%, while the third person is marginalized and has no reason to continue.
Yep, because there are games where you can hurt the other players. For example, a war game, right? I can just attack Rim or attack Alex, right? And in that kind of game, you'll end up where not everyone is just going to attack the person to their right and be attacked by the person on their left. It's not going to work out that way. Whoever goes down first is down, and the other 2 people or whoever gets the spoils is probably going to win.
In a 3-player game, there is no incentive to play evenly. You want to crush one other player. So basically, as soon as one player...
Thus increasing your chances of winning from 1 out of 3 to 1 out of 2.
So as soon as any one player is weak, everyone else, the other 2 people should pounce on them. And when it's me, Scott, and Alex playing, that always happens because that's the optimal strategy. Doing anything in fact, it's at the point where if that didn't happen, we'd almost be disappointed because then clearly someone is playing suboptimally and stupidly.
Yep. Someone's either like just holding out and then not attacking or, something like that.
2-player games are even worse.
If you do that, right, then it becomes 2 2-player games, but the second 2-player game, one person has double power because they have the spoils from the first 2-player game.
And 2-player games either boil down to paper, rock, scissors.
Yep.
Or indirect solitaire.
Yep.
So we've had trouble because it's not often we'll get, the 5 people we need to play like the optimal set of all the good games we own. Pretty much 4, 5, or 6 people, we can play awesome games. 2 or 3, not happening.
No.
So finally, a game appeared that has provided 2 and 3 player play that does not immediately break down. And
Not immediately.
it will break down, but
will.
it has not yet and doesn't look like it will anytime soon. And as soon as it does,
Well, it's sufficiently complex that
Yes.
it's not going to happen.
as soon as the game does break down, it's definitely going to turn into one of those really good 4 and 5 player games.
Yep. I mean, the game is Agricola, I think is the correct
Well,
pronunciation.
no, the pronunciation should be Agricola.
Well, that's what we say.
No, that's not just what we say. That is what the dude what speaks Latin at my office said it should be pronounced as.
Oh, whatever. It's like you and your Heracles.
Well, the name in Greek was Heracles.
Are you Greek?
Well, if you're saying the name
Are
in
you
Greek,
Greek?
if you're saying the name in
Are
Greek,
you Greek?
so Scott, by that logic, I mean, do you ever translate names?
Do you say schedule?
No, I'm not saying everyone should say Heracles. I'm saying the name of the person as he called himself. Did he exist? Or as he was spoken of? I mean, when you read The Count of Monte Cristo and someone's name is Etienne, do you want it translated to Steve?
Doesn't really matter.
Or do you just leave it as Etienne?
It doesn't matter.
Do you
to
leave
me.
it as Heracles? Or do you change it to Hercules? Anyway, in Greek it's Heracles. It was Romanized to Hercules. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. The point is, Agricola is a word in Latin.
Anyway, so Agricola is what I'll say either way because that is our funny mispronunciation, or in Rim's case, correct Latin pronunciation, right?
It is a simulation. We've talked about this. We don't have to talk about what the game is about. We've already
It's
talked
a
about
farming game. You farm.
it. It simulates freeholder farmers or farm families in the end of the Middle Ages, beginning of the Renaissance times in Europe.
Yep. You
Pretty
grow
much
your
straight
crops,
up.
you bake your bread, you care for your animals, you make babies, you take care of
Let me tell you, making
business.
babies is necessary and costly.
No, indeed. It's pretty much the whole point of the game is to make babies, and you got to feed the babies. That's the hard part. And that's it. I mean, it reminds me a lot of Kalis in that you sort of have these board of open actions, and when one person takes the action, no one else can take the action that turn. It also reminds me of like a few games I've played online. Like there was this one Flash game that was like a poverty simulator, and it's like each turn you pick what you want each person in your family to do, and you just try to get by without starving. You know, the same sort of mechanic goes on there.
Well, the game is basically a resource optimization game straight up. You start with a very, very limited set of resources, and among your resources are the things on the board that you acquire, and your actions, which are your people that you get to spend to do things.
Actions is the most valuable resource.
Well, yes, but basically you take these actions and you try to use them to acquire more goods and more resources in order to spend those resources to get more resources, optimizing your growth, and then having the optimal set of resources at the end of the game to get the most points.
Yep. And the thing about the game is like the way the scoring goes is it's not one of those games where you want to get a whole bunch of one thing, but then again, you don't want to get a little bit of everything either. You want to get a whole lot of everything in order to get the most points.
Well, the game has a certain mechanism designed to where the obvious strategies of these other games that are like this tend to not work. I'll pick one thing and hammer it and optimize it and make this perfectly working machine that just takes in sheep and spits out victory points. You can't do anything like that in this game.
Well, what the game does really well is at the same time as you're trying to get victory points, you're also trying to feed your family, right? And get a bigger family, which means you have to feed them more in order to carry on. If you ever fail to feed your family, you're fucked.
You're basically done.
And the
that
way
is
to
an Age of Steam mechanic right there.
So early on in the game, you're just trying to get this food machine rolling so that you can get enough food to feed a bigger family, to get more food to feed the bigger family, and then I'm doing so awesome, I can make so much extra stuff that even though I'm also feeding my family, I can also get victory points, right? But the way to most early on, you want to feed the family efficiently. You want to get that food as quickly as possible. And the way to do that is to pick one thing and go for it, right? If you try to spread out early on, a little bit of sheep, a little bit of grain, a little bit of vegetable, a little bit of baking, a little bit of cooking, you're not going to get the food early enough.
Actually, that's how I've won both of the games that I won.
What?
By spreading out a lot early on and not hammering anything.
Yeah, but you're not gonna get the food as quickly.
But I didn't need it. I got enough food to feed my people.
And that's the trick there, right? Is you want to get the food more efficiently, you target in. So you have this instinct to target in on one thing, but really, you can get enough food without the targeting, even though it's less efficient on the food getting.
But anyway, the deal with this game, the reason it's notable at all, because from all we've said, it's just a solitaire game. It doesn't break or fix any of the problems of 2 or 3 player games. And solitaire,
there's a little bit of non-solitaire.
Well, no, this is the point I'm making right now, because it appears from this to just be a solitaire game.
You can actually play it solitaire. It comes with rules for one player.
Lame, but at the same time, that's probably a good way to practice and just. It's an easy way to do all the math to solve the game without having to actually do the math. It's much more intuitive to play the game single player than it is to sit down with a pen and paper and actually calculate the odds and calculate the patterns and all that. But solitaire games suck, and I hate them. They're not fun because you're not really. It's kind of like I play a tower defense game, and you play a tower defense game. And then, we keep playing it and see who has the highest score, and that's it. And there's no interaction at all. It's an entirely strategic and not at all tactical game. This game, while it is highly strategic, is also highly tactical because there is a commons. The commons from which you get resources is extremely limited. Every round, if you take an action, and every action is unique, no one else can take that action at all.
Not that round, anyway. So, for example, if I take wood this round, no one else can take wood. And in fact, I've emptied the wood bin, and the wood bin will fill up slowly. Well, relatively slowly.
But at the same time, to the other cool thing, that while this is so limited, the rules in terms of what you can do with the resources you spend, unlike most other German board games and most other games, are not fiddly and not arbitrarily limited. If you take the build action, you can build as many things as you can possibly afford in whatever configuration you want.
And a lot of times when you build something, it'll give you an and/or. It's like, build build rooms in your hut and/or build stables. We don't care. Build as many stables and hut rooms as you want. Go nuts. It's like, wow, 2 different things you can do. It'd be like, sow fields as many as you want and bake bread as many as you want at the same time. It's like, shit.
So there's definitely this desire to, one, tactically, you might want to take a suboptimal action to prevent your opponent from taking an extremely optimal action.
For example, you might want to sow without baking bread just to prevent your opponent from sowing and baking bread.
But at the same, because then you'll starve them, and then their age of steamed. It's over.
Yep.
But at the same time, you have this instinct, which is probably a good one, to build up resources and build up resources. This is also, I think, why the extremely powerful nature of taking an action, thus denying it to everyone else, doesn't break the game. If you save up your resources in an optimal configuration, then you can take that action later and have the same effect because you can spend all the resources you've gathered up to this point while the other person took the action earlier. They spent all the resources they had, but they didn't get as much out of the taking of the build action.
Yep.
So basically, the game's resource mechanics are varied enough and fiddly enough. I mean, building materials, there's wood and there's reeds and there's stone. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of animals, and you have to pastures for all of them and stables and all that business. There's different kinds of crops. There's different buildings. There's specialists. There's so many things in the game that they skirt the line between so many, good game design solely through obscurity and obscurity that makes the game good and challenging and intellectually stimulating.
Yep. It also skirts the line between just randomness going on, but also, some sort of, complex and varied controls that are somehow equal.
But luckily, the game does a fantastic job of having a lot of randomness. The randomness thus preventing set strategies. Like Puerto Rico, the only randomness is the plantations. And at least in the 3-player game, it's pretty much a solved done deal. And there really isn't any effective randomness because you can as a player mitigate the randomness so much. And the amount of randomness that is there is so little that the game will still break down.
Yep, but in Agricola, right, you get, at the beginning of the game, every player gets 7 minor improvement cards and 7 occupation cards. There also is a tray with, I think, 10 or 12 major improvement cards that are available to everyone. And all these cards are basically sort of like buildings in Puerto Rico, right? You find some way to play them in front of you by, paying the appropriate cost, and then they, give you new abilities or powers. And there's a lot of them, and they all have different powers. And in some ways, if you draw better ones or better combination of them at the beginning of the game, because you can never draw any more, that's it. The 14 cards you get, that's it. No more, right?
Well, there are some things that change that, but we don't need to get into that.
But if you draw better cards, maybe you'll have an advantage, maybe you won't. You will be different from the other players.
But the brilliance of this game, this is I think what stands out in the game more than anything. And it wasn't obvious to us right away, and it probably wouldn't be obvious to you if you just played the game sight unseen. But early on, one of the first games Scott played, he has all these professions, the people, because one thing you can do is play these people, and they all have these different effects. You feel like you can make all these combos, like, wow, if I get all 4 of these guys in play, like, they're all great, and you feel like you want to use them all, and Scott tried to use a lot of them. But looking at the game, you probably, unless you're playing a very specific strategy, will only ever play maybe 2 of them. The majority of the cards you have in your hand, both improvements and professions, will go unplayed and are expected to go unplayed. It's not that you're supposed to use them all and bring them all out at the right time. It's that you are given all these tactical and strategic options. It's kind of like a randomized draft.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, right, with the cards, let's say there's a card that says, here's a card I know, actually, right? It says, if you have this card in front of you and you build the 4th room in your house, you automatically get the 5th room in your house, right? So think about this. You have to spend an action to play this card. Then you have to spend another action to build the 4th room in your house, and then you automatically get the 5th room in your house, right? What does that get you? Well, you spent 2 actions, and you saved the resources it costs normally to build a house room. So it's like, how much does it cost to build a house room? Like 5 resources and 5 wood and a reed, something like that? So basically, the card saves you 5 wood and a reed. If you had an extra reed lying around, and there's 5 wood lying on a wood spot, you could spend 2 actions to take the wood and then build the 4th room in your house. And thus, you're still spending 2 actions and still getting the 5th room in the house, at the same cost of resources and actions. So the card didn't actually save you anything, except now you have a card in front of you that might get you points, if it has points associated with it, or if another card allows you to get points based on cards. So if a card doesn't save you an action or save you resources that you couldn't have gotten with 1 action, then it's really sort of no difference if you use the card or don't. The only difference it makes is for the other players, you're either going to block up the play card action or block up the get resource action. So it basically just gives you, most of the time, a different way to do the same thing. Except for the rare cases where it actually saves you an action, which is when you definitely want to do it. Yep, if it doesn't save you an action, doing it is sort of yes, no, maybe.
But the randomized draft, coupled with the fact that it gives you all these kind of tactical and strategic options. I mean, you see all your cards at the beginning, and you can make your strategy based on that.
Yeah, you're not drawing the cards throughout the game. It's all the beginning, and then you make a plan based on it.
Yes, and you can definitely have a very, very clear strategy, a very precise strategy. But at the same time, you have to be tactically agile and able to react to what the other players are doing and be able to anticipate what the other players will do. And these factors, more so than the complexity of the math of the game, are probably what are going to give it the longer playtime that it otherwise might not have warranted.
Yep. The other things about the game that are interesting to note is that, number one, if you play with different numbers of players, the game actually changes drastically. Like, all these new actions come out and all these new cards come out, and the game is completely different. So it scales very well. I mean, this thing is from 1 to 6 players.
It also has optional scaling. There are multiple decks of cards.
Well, there's 2 things going on here, right? You get a lot of cards with the game, right? And the cards are minor improvements and occupations are the 2 kinds of cards. In each deck, right, there is the complex deck, the interactive deck, the basic deck, and the Z-Man, who's the US publisher expansion deck. So you can mix up the cards any which way you want. If you think a card is unbalanced, get it out of there, right? If you think a card is too weak, get it out of there. You can just mix and match the cards to make any deck you want. As long as there are at least 7 cards of each kind per player, everyone will get enough cards. So it doesn't matter which cards you have in there. As long as you think they're fair, put them in. If you think they're unfair, take them out. And if you want a game that's more interactive, just use the interactive deck. If you want a game that's more complex, use just the complex deck. If you want a game that's random, shuffle all the cards together and go nuts. you know? Plus, a lot of the cards are like, this card is only for 3 and up player games. This card is only for 4 and up player games. So you won't put those cards in when there's like 2 players
because
and they won't mess up the game.
Clearly break the game. Like,
or they won't work because other things change in the 2-player game and the card won't make sense.
Yep. Now, the one thing, I guess my enjoyment of this game, one thing that really stands out is that, you know, like the difference between Age of Steam and Railroad Tycoon was that you feel like you're accomplishing something. And few games like this have ever instilled in me a sense of accomplishment like this game does, but at the same time have hit me so hard and made me feel at times simultaneously like I was accomplishing so little.
Yeah, it's like you start out with jack and shit.
You start with the meagerest of crap.
You got like 2 people in a hut.
You start with nothing, and all of the options, like the things you do, the options you have, are pitiful. It's like
take 1 grain.
Take a tiny bit of stuff.
Plow 1 field.
And through the first, like, you'll go through the whole, like, the game actually plays really quickly, except for the time people spend thinking. And the whole, like, first set of the game, you're making very important, very heady decisions, but yet the fruits of your labor do not come into play for, 5 or 6 turns.
Yeah,
like,
and you have to feed your people. Like, the harvest comes quickly.
You have to set in motion events in turn 1 that will come into fruition in turn 5 and be ready for that then. The whole
If you don't have enough
maintaining...
food, you will starve, and then you basically just lose if you can't feed your people. All right? It's basically just you're out. The thing I've always wondered, right, and that no one's tried yet, is consider this.
The begging strategy?
Yes.
The game is specifically designed to prevent that.
Is it really?
Yes, because remember, you take more begging if your food deficit is greater.
That's true. But
if you didn't, then the obvious strategy is at one point in the game, beg, produce 0 food, and just go crazy with the victory points.
No. Here's the strategy I'm thinking of, right? Let's say, perchance, you didn't have enough food. Maybe you had some food, but not enough. There was a move you could make. Right? Someone else in the game needs one particular action to get enough food. Instead of feeding yourself with another action, instead block them and forcing both of you to beg, right? Or maybe multiple players to beg. And in that way, the begging didn't matter because everyone begged.
Yes, that is definitely a strategy, but I feel like
the situation would have to arise perfectly.
I feel like
moons would have to line up in a straight row.
I get the impression that if you ever beg, you done fucked up.
I get the impression that if you beg, you fucked up.
Of course, I did pull a somewhat fantastic coup against Scott and Alex the most recent time.
Well, you forgot you had the card that lets you eat wood.
But simultaneously, I basically pointed out that I could not win the game. And I had a lot of math to back me up by not pointing out the card I had that let my people eat wood, because they both also forgot about it, despite the fact that I made a big deal about it way in the beginning of the game. And I basically convinced them both that I'd lost the game totally, and there was no way I could win. And I was like, I shouldn't even play anymore. Let's just get this game done with. Go, go, go. And then they ignored me the rest of the game, and then I won by 1 point.
Well, we weren't ignore you. All it did, really, it didn't change my game strategically. What it changed was basically it realized there is a flaw in the game, and that if, let's say Rim didn't have that card, he was in a position where he fucked up and there's no way he could win because he would have been forced to beg, and it was close to the end of the game and he couldn't have won.
Yes, there's
if that situation arises, why should he keep playing? And that's frustrating for the other players because it's like, well, if I was in his shoes, I agree. Why should I keep playing? I can't win. But being one of the other players who can win, now my game is ruined if he decides to stop playing because now I'm not going to find out who wins because the game's over.
Some games deal with this very elegantly in that you still, like Railroad Tycoon, even if you can't win, the game is fun enough and you can accomplish enough in your turn to where the end of the game is enjoyable.
Other games have rules that are awesome, like quitting without fucking up the game. Do this.
Yep, or Age of Steam. Well, you fucked up. You're done. Out of the game.
Yep.
You're out. Bankrupt. 0. Leave.
Yep.
But this game, I can foresee players getting into that situation, and
especially bad players against good players. It's going to easily happen where they get in a situation where it's obvious they cannot win no matter what, even if they were allowed to do whatever they wanted to.
I can think of a few hackish ways out, but there's no elegant way out.
Nope. Unless you have like miracle cards in your hand or something.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest failings of the game. That and the fact that it worries me how powerful an extra child is, and the fact that basically one player in a 3-player game, it is very easy for one player to be denied an extra child for so long that it might be impossible for them to win.
Yeah, pretty much. You can just keep, depending on it, the card that comes up that lets you make babies comes up. Someone immediately gets on it. Okay, the next round, no one else can get on it, right? So that person has a baby before everyone else. The next round, they use their baby. Someone else immediately jumps on and gets the second baby.
Or the same person does it. Or, see, I think the problem is, in a 2-player game, it's kind of even out. In a 4-player game, more likely one person gets a little boost instead of one person getting kicked down.
Yep.
In 3-player, I feel like there's this specific condition whereby a player can be marginalized completely out of the game through no fault of their own.
The third person doesn't get the baby, right? The third person to get the baby is sort of way down there because this harvest comes before, and then there's sort of a step behind everyone.
Now, this happened to me, but I saved it. I salvaged it. But I could foresee a situation where it's unsalvageable.
You don't have the wood-eating card.
Yes, but even if I didn't have the wood-eating card, of course, my whole strategy would have been different. But
That's
still,
true.
There remains that there could be situations whereby you could lose a game through no fault of your own, but I'm not sure yet. The game needs a lot more play.
It does. But that's the one thing. It hasn't gotten bored yet. Another thing about this game, right, is a lot of times I'll play games that have where you put a lot of cards out in front of you, right? Even something like Magic the Gathering, right? You put a bunch of cards out that have permanent effects. And I'll always be like, oh, shit, I forgot about this card I had. I didn't do what it said. Crap, I'm trying to remember what game that happens to me in a lot. I can't think of one right now. But it's always like you play special powers in front of you, and then later it's like, oh, I forgot to use this even though I had it. Crap.
Well, in La Cheetah, I remember a number of times all of us would forget to count one of our cities, but
yeah, stuff like that. But
that game's just hard to score.
It's like, I'll have a card in front of me that says, take an extra victory point if this happens. Then that will happen 3 times, and I'll be like, oh, I forgot to take the extra victory point. Shit. I could have had 3 points, but now I forgot. Crap. In Agricola, that doesn't really happen. I seem to remember every card I have in front of me and use them all at every appropriate opportunity, which is, I don't know something about the design of the game keeps me from forgetting the cards. And whatever it is, I don't know what it is good.
The game is there's so little actually going on. The decisions you make, as complex and horrible as they are to make, are simple to enact and are limited in number on an absolute scale. So you'll spend most of your time reading all your cards over and over again and forming very complex strategies and very complex, I'll do this on turn 2, so that in turn 5, because he won't need this and he won't need this, I'll be able to take this action and then this action.
Yeah, I think also part of it, though, with the cards is sort of like San Juan, where San Juan has all these cards, and you look at them, you're like, man, if I can get the well and the steeple and the something else, then I could get a bajillion resources with one play. The thing is, you're better off just getting a whole bunch of silver mines, and that's it.
Silver mines.
Right? So I feel like in Agricola, maybe you're better off just getting a whole bunch of big, obvious, major improvements and forgetting all the little cards that add up and combo together because...
Well, don't combo. That's the thing. You can't combo. You can't expect to play all these things at the same time. You just have to have a strategy. And I think the reason we don't forget to use cards is that cards not only have a very specific purpose, but the cost of playing a card is enormous. So if you play a card, you had a fucking good reason to play it, and you're not going to forget about it.
Yeah, you're going to, when you play a card, you're going to use it at least twice. Otherwise, that was stupid because you wasted a whole action. If you were only going to use it once, you probably could have just did a different action and got an equivalent, effect for it.
But in conclusion, this game is fantastic. If you're a board game fan, just buy it. Don't even worry about it.
Yeah, this is pretty much the game right now. It's got a lot of things in common with a lot of other games like Kalis and things like that, but it's different enough from other games, and it combines elements from many different games so that it is something unique that stands alone. And even if it's eventually solved, it has a lot of replay value. And for most people who aren't as crazy as us about solving games, you'll probably be entertained by this times a hajillion.
And also, crazy as us, we always laugh Settlers of Catan is a completely worthless game if you've solved it. It took us years to solve it.
And the vast majority of people will never solve it, and they will always find Settlers of Catan to be awesome. And that vast majority of people will find Agricola to be awesome forever, probably.
But I guess not to sound like we're conceited about that, the only reason we solve games like Settlers or 3-player Puerto
Because
Rico,
we're crazy.
we play them.
And we play them too much. Most people play them like once in a blue moon.
We would play Settlers every day in college. We would play Puerto Rico like 3 or 4 times a day over the summer.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Most people would be
stuff.
happy to play Settlers once a week or once a month.
Yeah, and I guess the number of times we've played it makes sense. If you play a game that many times, you haven't solved it. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're done. Agricola's great. This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Odeo. Just click the link that says Send Me an Odeo on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.